3, 2.
Good evening. Call to order the October 25th, 2022 Planning Commission. Let's start with a salute to the flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we'll start off with item number 1. Oh, sorry, roll. Need that first. Go ahead.
Mr. McTeague?
Present.
Mr. Henderson?
Present.
Ms. Leschuk?
Present.
Mr. Benny's present, and Mr.
Haney present.
is present. We have a full board.
All right, start off with item number 1. North Point Falls Township Industrial LLC, TMP number 1304788, an amendment to rezone for parcel from RD3 to HI.
This is on. Right. Good evening, Mike McGinnis from Begley Carlin here on behalf of North Point. I have Peyton from North Point with me and Tim Casey from Gilmore as well. I also, as part of our petition, I'm not sure if the Planning Commission has copies of this, but I have a little color zoning overlay that shows the parcel that we're here on behalf of and some of the surrounding zoning districts, and then I have what's a clearer picture that I took from Falls website to pass along, because I think it reinforces why we're doing this, if I can hand it out at the outset.
Thank you. Thank you.
So this is a request to, thank you, to rezone the 13-47-88 parcel. And it's sort of an oddity, because if you look at North Point's site plans that we always have as part of North Point's development, this is what I would consider sort of the out parcel, right? North Point acquired the property from U.S. Steel. The vast majority of the property that North Point owns is within the gates, and it's zoned MPM, and we've been in front of you, and I don't need to get into this a number of times regarding North Point's development inside the KTC. And then if you look at the site, there's this sort of parcel in an area that I'll be candid about. I'd never heard of the RD3 zoning district. I didn't know it was a thing. And I think there's 3 parcels in the township that are zoned RD3. And we submitted this application, and we tried to be as candid as possible with all of our development proposals. So the reality of the situation is this. North Point owns this parcel. The parcel has challenges, which Tim can get into in a minute. The property is never going to be developed by North Point in accordance with the RD3 zoning district. There's probably a reason why this property has not been improved in the manner the township was hoping when the RD3 district was passed. So we would be here regardless, period, to come in front of you and request that this property be zoned either HI or MPM. And if you look at the map that we distributed, and I think it's a little clearer in the non-color version, but you can see it in the color version as well. In the color version, the light purple is all HI, and in the zoning map from the township, the vast majority of the land to the south is zoned HI. This parcel is one of 3 parcels. It's the middle one in the RD3, but it is surrounded by primarily industrial uses. And the best use is industrial, which can be accomplished through NPM or HI zoning. And North Point has had a number of priorities to this date in terms of their cohesive development, but they were always going to end up requesting this. However, to tie this back into the candidness of our application, it's referenced in Mr. Jones' review letter. The reason, the exigency for this request is North Point is seeking to move forward, hopefully in the not too distant future, with phase 3 of their development. As the Planning Commission, I think, is aware from prior conversations, there are a number of existing tenants that had leases with USX when North Point acquired the subject property from United States Steel. And one of those tenants is Harsco, who's located within the KTC. And this opportunity presented itself, perhaps in tandem, to say, all right, as we move forward with what again we're hoping is a more thoughtful design with phase 3, there was the opportunity to potentially relocate Harsco to this site. But I want to be clear about two things at the outset. First, this is North Point's application. This is not Harsco's application. So Harsco, if they intend to move forward, is going to need to submit a site plan with the associated studies, and the development is going to have to be approved by the Planning Commission and by the supervisors at that date. If it's not, if they can't reasonably utilize the site, they're not going to get approved. So that is a Harsco development application that will have to follow at a later date. There is no development at this time that's proposed with the zoning change. And the reason why I'm belaboring this point is Harsco or no Harsco, this is going to be the request that comes forward on North Point's end, because the RD3 zoning doesn't make the highest and best use or facilitate reasonable development at this site. So we wanted to come in front of you and say, yes, this is a North Point request. Yes, there is an opportunity for Harsco to be located here as we try to move them out of their location at the KTC. But certainly the double-edged sword of that is if the Planning Commission and the supervisors approve this, it is going to be zoned in perpetuity, HI, that doesn't attach to a particular applicant or developer. That will be the zoning designation going forward, with all the good and all the ills that come with that. We think that this is a better zoning district for North Point's use. I certainly have no problem defending any accusation of spot zoning. It's clearly on its face not spot zoning. It's compatible with the surrounding uses. There are a number of HI properties in the vicinity. But the question is, we can't compel the township. There's no argument from us that we can compel the township to change the zoning of the parcel. We can't do that. It's entirely discretionary on the township's end. We just happen to think that this is a better use on North Point's end inside the KTC. It will help facilitate that, but B, more importantly, legally, it's a better use for this parcel, and it's the most appropriate zoning district for this parcel moving forward. So that's the summary at the outset. I'd like to have Tim address sort of some of the site features here, and then have Peyton give a little bit more color to North Point's plans, and then he can touch on Harsco's existing operation, to the extent that that's desired as well.
I think maybe that would be appropriate first, so if
Sure.
we know where Harsco is currently located and what it is they exactly do.
Yes, Peyton Harrison with North Point. So in terms of the overall, our desire to begin our phase 3 development, where Harsco is located in the site on Southport Road, they currently have roughly 18 acres on Southport Road there, where they perform their operations. They use the port, which is close to the site, and bring in their material. Harsco, what they do is they recycle coal and copper slag, and so they bring in the slag from that's shipped from various places, but Germany mostly into the port, and then they repurpose it or recycle that slag and basically bag it up and sell it in bags to various distributors. So basically, at a high level, they bring in the material, they dry it, they sort it, bag it, and then they sell it there in their operation at KTC. Harsco, the zoning is crucial here for this area so that we can move, because where they're located on Southport Road is kind of right in the middle of where our phase 3 would be. They're kind of in the middle of a large area. So their current location limits our development by roughly, we did a calculation of 1,111,000 square feet of industrial space. So they currently lease also through 2028. And so our alternative option is to wait and start then. But that causes some other issues that we could run into. One being that we would lose nearly 2/3 of the KOZ benefit that this site has, which could also lead to just limiting the type of tenants that we would get here on this property in future development. Going back to just Harsco's operation, where their operation is going to be pretty much the same, just moved to the new site proposed is what we have in mind. But again, going back to Mike's discussion earlier, this site as RD3 was always planned to kind of come before and request a rezone, just based on we don't specialize in single family development, and the site just would fit better with the rest of our site in HI.
As part of Harsco's process, so they melt anything, burn anything, they have any processes like that they do that?
So to what I guess you could say is they crush it. That's probably not the best word for what they do, but there's not any burning, but it's more they do have heavy equipment that they essentially crush it. So it's the slag that they're bringing in needs to be just broken down to be able to be bagged. So there's no burning, but there is heavy equipment where materials being crushed and broken down to a smaller matter.
And could you,
Yeah, it might be better.
can you tell, could you tell us where it is on the plan?
Yeah.
currently?
Yeah, I'll take it back. I'll be your show.
Gotcha.
There you go.
Sounds good. Okay, so Harsco is currently on Southport Road, which runs around here, and they currently reside roughly right in the middle of this section here, close to parcel 4. Is it the same map that you guys have? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
So you're saying that they're in between Fairless Energy and Air Liquide?
Correct. So, hold on, I'm trying to get. So,
Well, that's Energy Drive.
yeah, this is Middle Drive here that I was pointing at. So they're on Southport Road.
Southport's here.
So it comes around. So the port is right here, and so they currently truck stuff onto Southport Road, and then I was up north a little bit. So they are down here, south of Middle Drive and north of Southport Road.
So near parcel 3?
Yes. So they are plan east of parcel 3.
Mr. Jones, I have a quick question. Biles Island, is that a preserved space?
That's, I believe, under the control of Waste Management, and it was supposed to be turned over to the township at some later date, and they were planning some sort of development there when T&M was the engineer. But I don't believe it's preserved.
Sorry, I don't know the answer to that, but I did look at the GIS map for this, and it is still controlled by Waste.
So my only concern is with the township putting it as RD3 is to develop it. There was talk of putting stuff down by the riverfront where that runs. Directly across from it, in the Jersey side of the river, there's multiple boat ramps, and I think that was the original intention of this. Also, understand that in your area, it's highly industrial, but in a lot of the waste, 2 lakes, 3 lakes they have there, it's turning into or it is, Penn Warner Club. So there's a lot of people with campers, they go fishing. I mean, right across from this is going to be, it's Mooresville Lake, which they have high fishing competitions and stuff like that. So just my concern is I understand where you're coming from and with the purchase of it, but I think the reason why the HD3 was put there was to hopefully spurn some type of development along Delaware River. We have the one access point at the park that the township owns, and from this area with the long-term intention, if it ever does come, Biles Island in that area right there would be a good opportunity for boats in some type of docking area.
Maybe Tim can go through the rear of that site, because I'm not necessarily certain that that's prohibited as part of this. I mean, I think in the immediate future, at least under North Point's control, the determination on the township's end, to be candid, is what's going to be preferred. Is it leaving it the way it is and hoping that there's the sort of development, Mr. Haney, that you're envisioning at a later date, and then North Point's, forced to not forced, but elects to sell the property to a third party, or develop the site in conjunction, either on their own or in conjunction with Harsco as part of a relocation effort, understanding that the answer to that question is not necessarily as obvious as it would be for the balance of North Point's development. I understand the competing concerns, and I'm sure you're correct that that's what was envisioned by the township when the RD3 was passed. I'm just here trying to weigh the cost benefit of both, and I'm not dictating what the correct answer is to that. But I don't necessarily think with the location of where at least this development would be on this parcel, I'm not sure it would prohibit any peaceful utilization of any of the waters to the east. And again, if you
We know from a application that we've seen from an adjacent property that this particular property is impacted severely by wetlands and floodplain.
Yeah.
And the operation that you described with crushing and noise and all that, that would mean that operation would be very close to the road. And there are, even though you described as industrial uses, they're more like office uses. There's some garages there, but there are residential uses there too, which would be very close to this. And I would be concerned about the noise and the impact for those properties.
Yeah, not abutting, but in the vicinity, there are, I think, two or three homes that are a little bit further up the road there. That's a true statement.
Yeah.
I would just reiterate that this is the question, and it's hard to go through this because on one hand we're talking about Harsco, on the other hand it's a North Point application. I think the threshold question is whether it's more appropriate for this parcel to be zoned RD3 or zoned heavy industrial, and understanding that Harsco or North Point or any other developer is going to have to provide satisfactory answers to the township regarding the nature of the development that would occur at this parcel. And if those answers, I think there's probably around 7 acres that are usable, I think is my understanding of the 18.6 on this site because of floodplain and other issues. But I think some of the environmental challenges, the topographical challenges probably prevent the sorts of development that are envisioned, or I'm assuming the township was envisioning in the RD3. So you know, it's a challenge, I would submit, for any development here, residential, industrial, or otherwise. And if there is an industrial use that's proposed here, be it Harsco or North Point or someone else, and they don't have answers to not negatively impacting the floodplain or potentially causing a noxious effect on the Biles Island or any of the residential parcels, you know, they're not going to get approval at that time, and it's going to remain undeveloped. And it's going to remain undeveloped with either HI zoning or RD3 zoning, but the result is going to be the same. So my position, obviously, I'm biased, is I think when you look at the cost-benefit analysis of just the act of rezoning this parcel in and of itself, both for this site and for the reasons that Peyton mentioned, I think the benefits outweigh the costs, but we are mindful that this is a little more complicated than a normal North Point application, that there are potential downsides, and if the development plan that's submitted at a later date is not done in the right way, it could create negative effects on surrounding parcels.
And kind of, you know, I guess I'm old, but I was on the comprehensive plan committee when we did this way back in 2004.
Yeah.
And it was kind of envisioned that this was a transition from the heavy industrial to the residential Mooresville, and it was kind of envisioned that we wouldn't try and promote truck traffic on Pennsylvania Avenue, and which is kind of what we're going to do here. So for instance, the RD1 district permits a warehouse or office building. Why isn't that the best use or better use given the fact that we have residential neighbors?
Let me pull up, I have a breakdown of the permitted uses here. So with the Riverfront district, we have single family, and then when you get to 4 acres or greater, you have medical, you have office, restaurant, bank, hotel, health club, marina, et cetera. And then there is warehousing as a permitted use subject to a number of criteria that I'm not going to go through this evening. I don't know that office or certain sort of warehousing is unfeasible in general here. I'm not saying that it isn't. I'm not going to be disingenuous. The right user probably could come through and develop some sort of office building. I can tell you that office is not, nobody's building office, period, anywhere. And they haven't been for a number of years. So that leaves us, I think, I don't want to play commercial broker up here and say, you know, who can we build a bank here? You know, could someone build a restaurant? Maybe. I'm going to say no, and then an Outback's going to show up here in 2031, and people are going to make fun of me at the Planning Commission. So I'm not going to promise that, but I do think there's challenges for office construction, and then you get into warehousing space, and sure, it's possible, subject to all the criteria here. But the reality is, unlike most property owners in the township who own and control one parcel, and the township doesn't have some guarantee about that property owner's stake in the township for the long haul, we all know that, you know, North Point isn't leaving the township. North Point is going to be here for the next 20, 30, 40 years. This is one of the biggest projects, if not the biggest project North Point has in the country, one of the biggest projects in the East Coast. So I would submit that I think everyone at the Planning Commission can be assured that North Point is going to remain here. So if you operate under the auspices that this is going to be a North Point controlled property, the question becomes, or North Point controlled properties, plural, what is the holistically the development that makes the most sense for North Point properties and for the KTC writ large?
I think you started out by telling us this was a Harsco property, that there's going to be a Harsco project.
No, what I said was that this is a North Point application, and it will remain let me be very careful with my wording. that North Point is the property owner, North Point acquired the parcel, and this is a North Point application, and we don't have any development proposed. And if Harsco never submits a land development project here, it's going to remain HI for good or for ill afterwards. And I'm not here promising you that Harsco will ever submit a land development for this site. But at the same time, I don't want to come in front of it would be easier, I would think, that I could have come in front of the board this evening and said, this is a North Point project, North Point owns this land, it's zone RD3, it doesn't make sense, change the zoning please to NPM and HI, and North Point's eventually gonna propose a smaller warehouse here. And I would imagine there would, maybe I'm wrong, but I would imagine there would be less questions or fewer questions from the board about that. My desire, as always, is to be as candid as possible, which is part of the reason why this is coming forth now, is there is an effort to relocate Harsco. So we're trying to walk a line in being forthright and saying this is a North Point application, but there is a very good chance, if this were approved, that Harsco would submit a development application afterwards. Is that, I just want to be clear about that.
I misunderstood.
Anybody else have any more questions?
I do think it would be worthwhile for Tim to take a minute and just go over the site briefly.
That's fine.
Yeah, hi. So the site is approximately 18.62 acres. It's vacant with woods. There's floodplain, there's potentially streams, maybe wetlands, and all these items would have to be designed around that to make this work, and would be in accordance with the ordinances when we come in to develop it in the future. We feel that, the rezoning would allow for a use that is comparable to what's out there in the surrounding areas as well.
And I'm gonna be rude and take the microphone back from Tim for a second before we have questions, just because I thought I knew the answer, but I wanted to confirm with Peyton. Currently, Harsco has 7 employees, and they have 3 trucks. So I would submit that is functionally a no impact use on this property from a truck standpoint. However, again, to be candid, Harsco may never submit anything here, and if it's heavy industrial, you could have a user at a later date who has heavier truck traffic. So I want to be clear about that. But for the current purposes, Harsco has a very limited employee count in trucks. Sorry, go ahead.
Anyone else from the board have any questions or comments? Mr. Jones, anything to add?
Nothing to add.
I just think that, I think most of the uses that are down there currently would better fit into the, like, maybe highway commercial area. We have some garages, we have some office spaces, we have Penn Valley Construction down there, we have a little bit of truck traffic down there, and you got a railroad yard down there. I'm a little hesitant to put some kind of extreme heavy industrial use right out there, knowing that there are still residents there. One property removed is the first house, and then you go a couple more, there's another house, and then there's a garage, and then there's another house. So I'm a little hesitant to do that.
No, I understand, and we can't, as I said, there's no legal standard where we can compel the township. It's us coming in front of the township and saying, we think this makes sense, and we think it makes sense for North Point, but it's entirely discretionary.
If there was another, again, I don't know if commercial highways is the right area either, but I just don't think that some of the heavy uses that currently occupy the mill property, I don't necessarily think some of them belong outside the fence. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I think, unfortunately, with Tyburn Road, it's kind of like the fence line. I understand it's your property, but for heavy industrial, I have concerns with that too.
Perhaps if you actually had like a plan of like what you're actually hoping to put there, it might compel us a little bit more. But to just give that blanket statement of like, you know what, now this is HI, without actually knowing what might actually be there, it makes us hesitant.
It just gives you the key to entry. We make it HI, and then anything listed under HI can go there, and then we're kind of stuck there with that.
I go down the mill quite often, and my recollection of the Harsco property is they have mounds of stuff piled all over the place. And that would could possibly create a dust issue out there on Pennsylvania Avenue. I mean, without us knowing exactly, like Mary said, what's gonna happen there.
And the proximity to the river.
And the proximity to the river and the residents.
Right, the only comment there is, since you're familiar with the property, you know that Harsco's improvements are limited. I mean, they received a waiver of development, I think in 2017 for their operation. So this might cut against our position, but again, to be straightforward, we could submit a Harsco development that has very, very limited site work. With a zoning change, Harsco could remove their modular building and their 70 by 40 foot slab, and someone could come in at a later date and build something that's more intense use. And that's the way zoning changes work. So that's part of the reason why, first of all, we don't have anything ready immediately to submit with Harsco, but secondly, even if we did, the site improvements are so limited that I think the bigger impact is less the Harsco specific development and more whether this is a better HI use or not, personally.
I have one question, Mr. Chairman. Mr. McGinnis, would North Point maintain ownership of the property and lease to Harsco, or would it be a sale?
I don't do North Point's transactional work, so I don't have, they own the property presently. I think most of North Point's properties they retain, but I don't know, this one could be ripe for a sale at a later date. I'm not saying that wouldn't occur. I can't sit here and guarantee that, unlike the rest of North Point's development, and I think this is worth, because it's relevant for the rest of North Point's projects that are in front of the Planning Commission. With the way the KOZ works, North Point has to retain ownership for the benefits to attach. So any project that comes in front of the Planning Commission and there's a question, how is North Point going to sell this? The answer to that generally is no, because A, they don't want to sell, but B, because of the way the KOZ works, that North Point received the benefits of the KOZ, and there's a whole process if you want to change that. This is a different site. So the same strings that are on this from North Point standpoint for the KTC aren't necessarily on this parcel, so I can't stand up here and guarantee it with the same degree of confidence as other sites.
This is not located in the KYZ.
Correct. I think that's correct, yes. I don't know if there's anything else you want to add to that, Peyton, but I think that's, yeah.
Any other questions or comments? Entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to recommend, deny the change of zoning.
Okay, Mr. Minnie, can you pull the board? What's that?
Second, I said second.
Mary, second.
Yeah.
Mr. McTeague?
No.
Mr. Henderson?
Yes.
Ms. Leschuk?
No.
No.
Well, oh, yes, sorry.
I like no
Backwards.
better.
Sorry, yeah, sorry about that.
The motion was to deny, so
To
yes.
deny, so
Yes
yes.
is to deny. No is to not deny.
As I was.
Mr. Henderson?
He said yeah.
He said yes? Okay, I say yes.
That
Mr.
was a yes by me also. I misunderstood the motion.
Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Haney?
Yes.
All right. Did you catch that, Diane? Yes.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right, our next item on is the minutes from August 2023. Are there any objections to approve the minutes as printed?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you.